Hello everyone, welcome to Biology for Knowledge. In this video, I'm going to talk about a particular chapter from the NCERT CBSE Class 11 textbook, Biomolecules. So what do we mean by biomolecules? Well, molecules or chemicals that are present in living organisms is what we call it as biomolecules. So the sum of total different types of biomolecules, compounds, and ions present in a cell is what we call a cellular pool. So, biomolecules are basically nothing but compounds of carbon that are present in every living organism. And carbon is the most versatile and the most predominant element of life. So, you can see in the table where each element is present in non-living, that is the earth crust, and in the living matter. In this, carbon is the most highest in the living matter as well as the oxygen in living matter. First oxygen, then followed by carbon. So biomolecules are being classified into two categories. You have inorganic, you have organic. So in inorganic you have minerals, gases, water, that is, you know basically not does not contain any life. Whereas in organic, it consists of carbohydrates, lipids, amino acids, proteins, enzymes, nucleotides, nucleic acid, vitamins, etc. These are present in every living organism. That is what we call it as organic. So again, biomolecules are classified into two categories. One you have micromolecules, and the other one you have macromolecules. Micromolecules, they are, from the term micro, you can say they are small size and they have low molecular weight, that is between 18 and 800 daltons, and they are found in the acid soluble pool. Whereas macromolecules, from the word itself, macro means large, the size is large, and they have high molecular weight, and it is above 10,000 daltons, and they are found in the acid insoluble pool. So the example of micromolecules you have are minerals, gases, water, sugars, amino acids, nucleotides. Whereas in macromolecules you have carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So let us see the major complex of biomolecules of all living cells. First one, protein, building block, amino acid, the major function, the basic structure and function of a cell. Then DNA, you all are probably familiar with, is the building block is deoxyribonucleotide, which is the hereditary, its major function is the hereditary information or coding of genes. RNA, its building block is ribonucleotide, major function protein synthesis. Polysaccharide, its building block is monosaccharide or monomers, they are storage forms of energy. And lipids, that is mostly fats, their building blocks are fatty acids and glycerol. So the major functions are storage form of energy to meet long-term demands. So this is the structure of nucleotide. You have nitrogenous base, you have a phosphate, and then you have a pentose sugar. This is the main structure of a nucleotide. This is the sugar structure. You have either deoxyribose and you have a ribose. Deoxyribose is like the oxygen in here, it's the OH is not there, so it is just with hydrogen here. And ribose, you have two hydroxyl group. So this is the difference between deoxyribose and ribose. And nitrogenous bases, you have two types. You have purine bases and you have the pyrimidine bases. Purine, you have like adenine and guanine, and pyrimidine, you have cytosine, thymine, and uracil. Uracil mainly is in RNA and thymine is mainly in DNA. So basically in the Chargaff rule, it says like the the ratio of one purine base and one pyrimidine base is actually in the ratio between 1 is to 1. So you should have one purine nitrogen base and one pyrimidine nitrogen base. So if it is an adenine, which is a purine, it should be paired with a pyrimidine, that is thymine. If it is a guanine, then it would be with cytosine. So that pairing will be in the ratio of 1 is to 1. That is mainly in DNA. If you're going for RNA, thymine instead of thymine, there will be uracil that will be bond with adenine. But guanine and cytosine will remain the same. So that is only the change. So this is a nucleotide. Difference between a nucleotide and a nucleoside. So each nucleotide has different this is deoxyribonucleotides and this is just ribonucleotides. In ribonucleotides you have, that is in the RNA, uracil, mainly that is being in place of thymine. Now let us move to the structure of DNA. So DNA is a double helical structure, that is alpha helix actually. That is that consists of 4 nitrogenous bases, pentose sugar, and linked with phosphate bonds. You can see here you have a phosphate bond linked with 2-deoxyribose pentose sugar, and then you have the 4 nitrogenous bases in between. You have the adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. This sugar and the pentose, the phosphate, acts as the backbone of the DNA. And these amino acids, the base, nitrogenous bases are linked with hydrogen bonds. So it's a complementary base pairing. So you can see the dimension of the DNA right here. As I told you earlier, you have one end with is the 5' to 3', and you have the 3' to 5'. So one will be the leading strand, one will be the template strand, that is the leading, another one will be the complementary strand or the. So these strands will one strand will be acting as a code sequence for the protein. Other strand will start synthesizing to form an RNA, will undergo synthesis for making the complementary DNA strand or also for formation of RNA or protein synthesis. So you can see here you have the hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and you can see how the structure of DNA is. So it's a double helical structure. This is the Watson and Crick model. Now in RNA you have 3 types. mRNA, that is messenger RNA, rRNA, that is ribosomal RNA, and tRNA is the transfer RNA. So as we all know, RNA is actually a single strand and DNA is double strand. You actually have single stranded DNA and double stranded RNA also, but mostly RNA will come in the single strand only. So in the RNA, if you see, the difference is like, instead of thymine, you have a uracil which is bonded with the adenine. This is the mRNA. mRNA, what it does, it is codes the protein. It starts producing the coding for the protein and it's the initiative one. And tRNA helps in transcription and translation of the protein of the amino acid, and the rRNA helps in the protein synthesis. Actually, rRNA's function is unknown, specific function is unknown, but they are known to be used for coding protein synthesis. And they are, so let us see the basic first biomolecule called carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are actually the most abundant organic molecules in nature. So the term carbohydrate is actually derived from the French, meaning hydrate the carbon. That means it's a hydrate of carbon or CnH2 CHON. So carbohydrates are defined as organic substance having carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, where hydrogen and oxygen are in the ratio of 2:1, that is found in water like H2O. So functions of carbohydrates are their most abundant source of energy, the precursors for many organic compounds like fats, amino acids. They are present as glycoproteins, glycolipids in the cell membrane and functions like cell growth and fertilization. They are present as the structural compound like cellulose in plants, exoskeleton in some insects, cell wall of microorganisms. So they are in animals, the carbohydrates are stored in the form of glycogen to meet the energy demands of the body. Whereas in plants, it is mainly glucose or cellulose, whereas in animals, it is glycogen. So carbohydrates are basically divided into three categories. You have monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. In the oligosaccharides only, it is further classified into disaccharides, trisaccharides, and tetrasaccharides. Monosaccharides are basic units of carbohydrates which you cannot be like which cannot undergo further hydrolysis, and they are based on the number of carbon atoms and are based on the type of functional group. For example, you have glucose and fructose, and oligosaccharides can be further hydrolyzed, and they are also further classified into disaccharides, trisaccharides, and tetrasaccharides. Disaccharides means two sugars, trisaccharides means three sugars, and tetra means four sugars. And then last but not the least, you have the polysaccharides, which is non-crystalline, non-soluble in water, and they are tasteless on hydrolysis, will give molecular weight of monosaccharides. For examples, you have starch and cellulose. These are a complex sugars, we call it as. So monosaccharides, based on the number of C atoms, you have trioses, tetroses, pentoses, hexoses, heptoses, etc. Based on functional group, you have aldoses, ketoses. In trioses, you have glyceraldehyde, dioxyhydroxyacetone. Tetroses, you have erythros, triose. Pentoses, you have ribulose, xylose, arabinose. Hexoses most commonly like you have glucose, fructose, galactose, mannose, and heptoses, glucoheptose, pseudoheptulose. That is mainly if you have the carbon numbers, if you see like trioses means 3 carbon, tetroses means 4 carbon, pentose means 5 carbon, hexose 6 carbon, and heptose 7. Based on functional group, you have aldoses and ketoses. Aldoses are the ones who have the aldehyde group functional group, that is CHO, that is glyceraldehyde, glucose. These are all come under aldoses. If you can see the structure here, in that you will have one CHO right here. This is an aldehyde. Ketosis are the sugars that who have a functional group of ketone, that is C double bond O. Right here, you have fructose and dihydroxyacetone. Now, derivatives of monosaccharides, we are just going a little shorter term. We are deoxy sugars, amino sugars, sugar acids, and sugar alcohols. So, these are all different derivatives of monosaccharides that we are not going through further. Deoxy sugars, you all know, mainly that is a structural component of DNA. Amino sugars are mainly found in the amino acids. Sugar acids found in the sugar acids, like for example, you have ascorbic acid. Sugar alcohols, reduction of altoses or ketosis like glycerol and mannitol. Oligosaccharides that I have mentioned you earlier, which all comes, you can see here, they are depending upon a n number of monosaccharide molecules, they are classified again disaccharide, trisaccharide, and tetrasaccharides. The smallest and the the commonest one, most common oligosaccharides, you call it as the disaccharides. They are the sucrose and lactose. That is the and disaccharides. These are the examples of disaccharides, and most of the things sugars that we consume are mostly disaccharides. And polysaccharides, they are also called as glycans. They are made up of repeating units of monosaccharides held by glycosidic bonds. And during the formation, a water molecule is released at each condensation, which will help to it almost reduce the bulk, making it almost insoluble and decreasing its effect on the water potential or osmotic potential of the cell. They are ideal as storage and structural components. So you have two types, homoglycans and heteroglycans. From the term itself, they are made up of homoglycans means they are made up of only one type of monosaccharide monomers like starch, glycogen, cellulose. Whereas heteroglycan from the term itself is the condensation of two or more types of monosaccharides. Like these are the different types of polysaccharides. As storage of polysaccharides, it can be in the form of starch, glycogen, and inulin. Starch mainly found in the plants, glycogen is found in animals, and inulin is found in certain plants like dahlia, bulbs, garlic, onion, etc. They are easily soluble in water, and they are also used for testing kidney function because they have been, they can be readily filtered through the kidney itself. And structural polysaccharides, you have two types. One that gives the structure, one is cellulose, another one is chitin. Cellulose is mainly found in plants and it's totally absent in animals. And chitin is found in the exoskeletons of some invertebrates like insects and crustaceans, but it becomes hard like when it's impregnated with calcium carbonate, and it's the second most abundant organic substance. Cellulose first and then comes chitin. Chitin you can find it in fungi also. And next we have proteins. What are proteins? Proteins are the most abundant organic molecules of the living system. They form about 50% of the dry weight of the cell, and they are the most important for the architecture and functioning of the cell. So proteins are actually polymers of amino acids. So they on complete hydrolysis yields the amino acids. So there are 20 standard of amino acids which repeatedly found in the structure of proteins, whether in animal, plant, or even microbial. The most abundant animal protein is actually collagen, and Rubisco is actually the most abundant plant protein. And protein synthesis is always controlled by DNA. But some cases RNA also be controlled, but if controlling protein synthesis is always controlled by DNA. Amino acids basically they are the functional group of the proteins, and they have two functional groups, amine and a carboxylic acid. So amine groups are basic and carboxylic acid group are acidic. So R can be H in glycine, which is in CH3 in aniline, hydroxymethyl in serine, and others it can be hydrocarbon chain or a cyclic group. So all amino acids they contain CHO, that is carbon, hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen, but some of them additionally have sulfur with them. So the physical and chemical properties of amino acids are due to amino, carboxyl and are functional groups, and they are differentiated into 7 groups. You have neutral, you have acidic, you have basic, you have sulfur containing, you have alcoholic, you have aromatic, you have heterocyclic. You can have a go through of this. I'm not going to go through more, but the main thing you have to know is neutral, acidic and basic. And you have aromatic and alcoholic also, which is main thing, but go through 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6 and even 7 also. These are the main thing that you have to go through. S containing sulfur amino acids that is mainly you have to study know is methionine, which is mainly used in the coding sequences. This is the structure of each amino acids, and you can see which all comes in neutral, acidic, basic, alcoholic, sulfur. It's not sulfur, it's sulfur. Instead of cysteine, if you know the structure of methionine, it's okay, but if you know the structure of cysteine, well and good. And you have phenylalanine, which is aromatic acid, amino acid. And amino acids are basically they are linked serially by peptide bonds, and these are formed between like one amide of one amino acid, which is linked to the carboxyl group of an adjacent amino acid. So the chain having two amino acids are linked like by a peptide bond is we call it as a dipeptide. So this sequence of amino acids will be present in a polypeptide that will be specific for a particular protein. So if you see the structure of protein, there are four basic structures. You have primary, you have secondary, you have tertiary, you have quaternary. Quaternary. In the textbook, it will be easy for you to understand, but primary structure refers to the number of and the linear sequence is actually a linear sequence of amino acids in the polypeptide chain. And it's a location of a disulfide bridge. You can see in between here. You can see here this part are like sulfide bonds linked together. This is the disulfide bridges, and it refers to a number of amino acids, and it's in a linear sequence. And this is the responsible for the function of protein. So what it does, the N terminal of the amino acid is written on the left side, and the C terminal acid is written on the right side, right here. The C terminal always will be the carboxylic acid, and the N terminal will be written with the amine. Secondary will be known as the folding of the linear chain only into a specific coil structure called the secondary structure. So when the primary structure, when it undergoes like folding into like form a specific structure, we call it as the secondary structure. You have three types. You have alpha helix right here, you have beta pleated sheet, and you have the collagen helix. Basically you can see the alpha and beta. Tertiary is like when it goes again another folding when the helical polypeptide fold itself and it assumes like a complex, but in a specific form, maybe a spherical or rod like or something in between. They are known as tertiary structure. You can see here in the 3D. And in the quaternary structure, when both alpha chains and two beta chains, when they link together, they'll have four sides, two or more polypeptide chains. They're said to be quaternary. So two beta chain and one alpha chain linked together. You get like a square kind of structure which gives four sides. That is called as quaternary. And best example you have hemoglobin, which has the heme group here, and these are linked with iron bond, iron atoms. So this is the structure of the protein. Amino acids, you have primary, the linear, again folded secondary, another folding into a complex structure, you have tertiary, and again folding with two alpha 2 beta linked together get like sides, you call it as a quaternary. Now let us see the protein's function, chemical nature and solubility, and their nutritional importance. The functional classification, you have structural proteins, enzymatic, transport, hormonal, contractile, storage, genetic, defensive, receptor. You can go through this, and mainly you have to know genetic proteins, receptor proteins, hormonal, enzymatic, and structural. You can go through all, and transport proteins. These are the functional classification of, and classification based on the chemical nature and solubility. You have simple proteins, conjugated proteins, derived proteins. Simple proteins, they are composed of only one amino acid. Residues Conjugated will be like there'll be non-protein prosthetic group along with the amino acid, and derived proteins that are denatured or degraded products of above two. That is the secondary metabolites we call. Proteins, as usual, you have classified into three. In simple, it's classified into two. You have globular and fibrous. Globular, you have albumin, globulin, histones. Fibrous, collagen, elastin, keratin. Conjugated, you have nucleoproteins, glycoproteins, mucoproteins, lipoproteins, phosphoproteins, chromoproteins, metalloproteins. From the words itself, you can make it out what it means. And derived, you have both, as I said, primary and secondary metabolites. These are the examples. And then let's go to the lipids. With the water, I say, touch me not. To the tongue, I'm tasteful. Within limits, I'm beautiful. In excess, I'm dangerous. That is just a thing, it's just a riddle. So that means the answer is lipids. Lipids are none other than fats. They are the chief concentrated storage form of energy, which forms about 3.5% of the cell content. They are insoluble in water, but they are soluble in organic substance like alcohol and ether. They are the concentrated fuel reserve of the body, and they are constituents of the membrane structure and regulate the membrane permeability. They serve as the source of fat soluble vitamins, that is vitamin A, D, E, and K. These are all fat soluble vitamins. That means they can be only soluble in fat and body, and they don't mean they, they don't come in the form of diet. The body has these natural vitamins inside. And lipids are more important cellular metabolic regulators, and they protect the internal organs and serve as an insulators. Especially if you see, like, in wires you have like a rubber like coating. What is mainly that for? To protect the wire from corrosion, right? So these that rubber acts as an insulator, or to prevent any leakage shock, that you call it as, it acts as a insulator. Same thing, lipids also, they protect the internal organs as an insulating material. And lipids, again, they are derived into three. You have simple, complex, and derived. In simple, it is fats and oils, and then you have waxes. Complex, you have phospholipids, glycolipids, lipoproteins. From the word itself, you can make phospholipids. They are phosphate or phosphoric acid. Glycolipids, presence of sugar, glucose, glycogen. Lipoproteins, proteins that contain lipid compounds. And derived, that means you have steroids and terpenes. Simple lipids, as I have already mentioned, they are like esters of fatty acids and alcohol with two types. You have neutral or true fats, and you have waxes. So I'm not going through much further in this, because I've already mentioned you in the previous slide itself. Here, this is about glycerol and fatty acid. Glycerol has three carbon atoms, each bearing an hydroxyl group. And fatty acid is an unbranched chain of carbon atoms. It has like a carboxylic acid group at one end, and it is bond at the hydrogen with all other atoms, to almost all other carbon atoms. And fatty acids can be two types. You have saturated and unsaturated. Waxes are nothing but long chain of saturated fatty acid and a long chain of saturated alcohol of high molecular weight other than glycerol. For example, you have beeswax, lanolin, that is wolf fat, sebum, cerumen, plant wax, paraffin wax. Paraffin wax, most commonly, if you see the candles and petroleum jelly, like Vaseline, for example, unscented Vaseline, you get that is mainly the paraffin wax is obtained from petroleum. Plant wax is a coating from the plant organs, like to prevent transpiration. Beeswax, that is from the worker honey beans. And wolf fat is actually the ones that is mainly used, that is being secreted from the wool of the sheep, that is used for mainly are used by people who are doing knitting purposes. The complex lipids, they are the derivatives of simple lipids that have an additional group like phosphate and nitrogen base and even a protein, etc. So they can be phospholipids, glycolipids, lipoproteins. As itself, I mentioned you, phospholipid can be hydrophobic and a hydrophilic. They have a hydrophobic tail, which is the fatty acids, that means water heating, and hydrophilic head, which means water loving, that is phosphate group. In glycoripid, they are the components of cell membrane containing particularly myelin sheath and chloroplast membrane. Cerebroside are the most simplest form of glycolipid. And lipoprotein, as I mentioned you, they contain lipids and proteins in the molecule. They are the found in milk and egg yolk. They are the main constituent of membranes. And you have lipids are transported in blood and lymph. These are all known as lipoproteins. Derived lipids, as I mentioned, you have steroids, terpenes, and prostaglandins. They are derivatives obtained from the hydrolysis simple and complex. I'm not going through all this. And you have enzymes, which are the group of catalysts functioning in the biological systems right here. And enzymology is the branch of science that deals with the study of enzymes. They are usually proteinaceous substances that are produced by the living cell without themselves getting affected. And enzymes enhance the rate of reaction and are found in the cells under the instruction of genes. So you have proenzymes, that is zymogen, that is mostly enzymes occur in the inactive forms, and they can only be activated by specific factors like pH, substrate, etc. So within the cell formator is called endoenzyme, and away from the cytosynthesis you call exoenzymes. So those are the two categories of enzymes. So this is enzymes are actually the biocatalyst the catalyst in any biochemical reactions because they don't undergo any changes in themselves. They can change the substrate concentration but without changing their molecular structure. So that's why they are referred to as biocatalysts. And they are mainly amphoteric in nature because they can react with both acidic as well as an alkaline substance. And specificity, like they are very specific. Most of the enzymes are specific in their action. So it will act either like one substrate or in a group of closely related substrate. So and they're also colloidal in nature. That is provide like a large surface area for reaction to take place. And enzyme optima, they need best conditions like pH, temperature, etc. Temperature sensitivity, some since enzymes are like proteins, they are affected by the change in temperature. With increase in temperature, enzyme can take place up to 40 degrees centigrade, but however with temperature above they will undergo denaturation or even complete breakdown. And even below the freezing point also they become inactivated but not destroyed. So the main reaction will take place at the optimum temperature, and they are also specific to pH, that is pH sensitivity. And most of the intracellular enzymes function are best around the neutral pH. There are some enzymes that are acidic and there are some enzymes that are basic also, but most of the enzymes you find are basically neutral. They work best in the neutral pH. Then you have concentration on enzymes and you have enzyme inhibitors that I'm not going to go through that. And these are the group of enzymes and the reaction catalyzed, and this is the examples: oxidoreductases, transferases, hydrolases, isomerases, lysases, and ligases. And in that you can see which all the functions they go through. From oxidoreductases, that is they go in the redox reaction. Transferases, that from the term itself you can say they transfer a specific group from one substrate to another. Hydrolysis, means they go hydrolysis. That means from the word hydro, that means they say hydrolysis of a substrate. Isomerase, they'll go change the molecular form of a substrate. Lysis is like non-hydrolytic removal or additional group of a substrate. And ligase is main, from the term itself, you can say they join two molecules. That forms a bond, new bonds. And these are the examples of the enzymes you can see here. This is the enzyme reaction. You don't have to go through that. But for an energy with the reaction progress, you can see the graph goes like this. And this is how this is the enzyme, the active site. This is the substrate. When the substrate gets bonded to the enzyme, what happens, the bonds in the substrate are weakened and the substrate is broken up to reveal two products, but no change in the enzyme. So that's why enzymes are known as biocatalysts, because they can change the structure of the substrate or without undergoing for any change in their molecular structure. So this is the reaction that I have mentioned you. What happens? This is for reaction, and in case of inhibition, enzyme, active site, it binds with the inhibitor. Inhibitor will compete with the substrate. This is mainly to, you have two types in reaction and inhibition. Reaction is lead to product formation. Inhibition is like you're inhibiting the enzymatic reaction, so you won't lead to any product formation. So I guess that's the end of the chapter, biomolecules. Hope you liked the video, and don't forget to like the video, comment, share, and subscribe to Biology for Knowledge for more video updates, and click on to the bell icon for further notifications. And as the well, see you. Have a good day.